The wind screamed across the frozen land of Varela. It was a world of endless ice where even sunlight felt cold. Storms rolled across the planet like angry beasts, burying everything in white silence. Nothing should have survived here. Yet deep under the thick layers of ice, something was alive, something was crying. In the heart of the frozen world, 3 alien sisters lay trapped. Their names were Arya, Lume, and Nira. They were once part of a great civilization that had ruled the skies above Varela. But now their people had abandoned them, left them buried alive in the dark. Their thin, glowing bodies were trapped in ice chambers. Their breaths weak, their hearts slow. Arya, the eldest, held her sister's hands as the cold bit deeper. "Stay awake," she whispered softly, her voice trembling. "Don't let the ice take you." Her youngest sister, Nira, cried quietly. "They left us, Arya. They left us to die." Arya looked up at the frozen ceiling above, her blue eyes dim. "I know," she said, "but someone will hear us. Someone will come." Her voice echoed weakly through the ancient tunnels of ice. Lost in the cold silence far above, miles away from the icy grave, a small human research base stood alone on the surface. Inside, a man named Ethan Cole worked late into the night. Surrounded by screens and static noise, he was a mechanic, an engineer, and the only human left on Varela after the other crew members had gone home. He stayed behind to study the planet's strange magnetic signals. But lately, he had been hearing something unusual, a faint sound like whispers under the static. He turned up the volume, frowning. "Probably just interference," he muttered, sipping cold coffee. But then, through the noise, came a sound that froze him in place. It was a voice, soft and broken, whispering, "Help us." Ethan stared at the speaker, his heart racing. The voice came again, weaker this time. "Please, help us." He grabbed the microphone. "Who's there?" "Identify yourself." No answer, just a strange rhythmic pulse. 3 heartbeats. Faint but steady. Ethan quickly ran a scan. Tracing the sound's source, the readings made no sense. The signal came from under the surface, more than 2 miles below the ice. He shook his head. "That's impossible. No life down there." But the voice came again, this time clearer, like a cry in his mind. "Please." "The ice is closing." Ethan's breath fogged the glass of his helmet as he looked outside the window. The storm was growing stronger, winds cutting across the frozen desert. Every rule said he should wait until morning. But the voice haunted him, echoing in his ears. He couldn't just sit there, not when someone or something was dying. He packed his oxygen tanks, thermal gear, and a scanner drone. He recorded a message in his log. "If I don't make it back." "This is Ethan Cole, Varela Base, responding to unknown distress signal at grid 1249. The metal door opened with a hiss, and the freezing air hit him like a wall. He stepped into the blizzard, each step crunching deep into the snow. The cold burned his face. The storm howled louder than any sound he had ever heard. But through it all, he heard the faint whisper again. "This way." He followed the signal tracker, its light blinking in the snow. The terrain cracked and shifted under his boots, and he realized he was walking over a massive glacier. A sharp beep echoed from the scanner. It had found something. Beneath his feet, deep in the ice, the radar showed a faint outline. 3 shapes close together. Ethan knelt and brushed away the snow, staring down through the ice for a moment. He thought he was seeing things, but then the ice shimmered faintly blue. And he saw them, 3 glowing figures. Frozen in the darkness, his heart skipped. "Dear God," he whispered. They didn't look human. Their faces delicate, their bodies strange and beautiful, but their hands were touching, like sisters holding on to life. He pressed his gloved hand against the ice. The scanner beeped again, life signs detected. Weak but real. "They're alive," he said in disbelief. "They're actually alive." The ground suddenly trembled, cracks spreading across the glacier. Ethan stumbled back as the ice groaned and split. A deep rumble shaking the earth. The storm roared louder, the temperature dropping even further. He tried to back away, but the ground gave way beneath his feet. He fell through the cracking ice. Sliding down a frozen tunnel into darkness, his light flickered wildly as he tumbled, finally landing in a cavern glowing with blue crystals. Everything was silent except for his ragged breathing. He looked up and saw them again, the 3 sisters, trapped inside crystal-like ice chambers. Their eyes closed, their faces peaceful but fading. Ethan's voice trembled as he whispered, "Hang on, I'm here." He crawled to the nearest one, wiping frost off the glass. Her hand was small, cold, but when he touched it, a faint glow spread through the ice. The scanner beeped faster, their heartbeats rising slightly. He realized they were responding to him, to his warmth. He looked around and whispered to himself, "No one's coming for you, are they?" He tightened his gloves, pulled out his thermal cutter, and started melting the ice. The light of his torch reflected in their faces, and for the first time, he saw a tear frozen on one of their cheeks. Above him, the wind screamed through the cracks. But Ethan didn't stop. He couldn't. He was a human, and humans never turned away from a cry for help. Even if it came from beneath the ice of a dying world. The cavern was silent except for Ethan's breath echoing against the ice walls. His light flickered across frozen crystals that stretched like sharp glass spears. It felt like he had fallen into a tomb built by time itself. The air was thin, biting, and filled with the smell of metal and cold stone. He moved closer to the three glowing shapes sealed inside the thick ice. Their faces looked peaceful, but their bodies told another story. Scars under the frost, symbols carved into their skin, and wires frozen inside the ice around them. They weren't just trapped. They had been left here on purpose. Someone wanted them buried where no one would ever find them. Ethan placed his gloved hand against the first chamber. His scanner blinked red and green, switching between life and death. The readings were faint, but the rhythm was there, heartbeats slow but steady. "They're alive," he whispered again, his voice trembling with both fear and wonder. He looked up at the tunnel above him, a jagged hole of light where he had fallen through. Snow was still drifting down, slowly sealing his only way out. "Great," he muttered. "Now it's just me, 3 frozen aliens, and a storm that wants me dead." He tried calling the base, but the radio crackled with static. No connection, no signal, no help. He turned back to the ice chambers. One of the figures, Aria, was closest to the edge, her hand almost touching the outer frost. Her hair shimmered like liquid silver under the faint blue light. Her lips were slightly open, as if she had tried to say something before the cold took her. Ethan swallowed hard and aimed his thermal cutter at the thickest part of the ice. The torch hissed and burned bright, steam rising as the ice began to melt. Minutes passed like hours. The heat drained his battery fast, and the oxygen alarm on his suit began to blink. But then something happened, something he didn't expect. The ice cracked, not from his tool but from inside. A small pulse of blue energy spread from her hand through the wall of frost. Ethan jumped back as the entire chamber glowed for a few seconds. The heartbeat signal on his scanner spiked. She was responding, trying to break free. He ran closer, shouting through the noise, "Hang on. I'm here. Just hold on." Her eyes fluttered open for the briefest moment, glowing faintly through the frost. Then the light faded again. Ethan's chest tightened. No, stay with me." He adjusted the heat setting higher, burning through the thick layers of ice. Steam filled the cavern, fogging his visor. He wiped it and saw her face clearly now. She was young, maybe 20 in human years. Her skin smooth like crystal, her expression peaceful. He could feel warmth spreading from the chamber, like the ice itself didn't want to hold her anymore. As he worked, he noticed strange symbols etched on the ice wall near the chambers. Old writing, alien language, but one phrase repeated over and over. He recorded it on his scanner and ran a translation. The machine blinked and read the words aloud. "The tainted ones must never rise." Ethan stared at the message, cold creeping down his spine. Someone had buried them for a reason. But what kind of monsters called their own children tainted? A low hum echoed through the cavern, deep and mechanical. Ethan froze. It wasn't coming from the chambers. It was coming from the tunnel behind him. He turned slowly, flashlight shaking in his hand. Something was moving in the darkness, crawling down the icy walls. Small metal limbs glinted under the blue light. A drone, no, 3 drones, ancient but still active. Their red eyes flickering like embers. Ethan crouched behind a block of ice. Holding his breath, the drones scanned the room, beams of red light sweeping across the chambers. He watched in horror as one of them stopped near the sisters. Its mechanical voice echoed, "Subject status terminated." Then another replied, "Energy detected." "Execute cleansing protocol," Ethan whispered. "Oh no, they're going to destroy them." He grabbed his thermal cutter again and sprinted from behind the ice. The drones turned toward him instantly, lasers lighting up. He dived and rolled, firing the cutter's flame directly at one of them. The heat melted its sensors and the drone screeched. Falling into the ice pit, the others fired back. beams slicing through the fog. One hit Ethan's shoulder, burning through his suit. He screamed in pain but didn't stop. He threw a flare toward the chambers. It exploded in bright orange light. Blinding the machines for a moment, Ethan ran to Araya's chamber, slamming his hand on the scanner's release pad. "Come on, come on!" he shouted as the device hummed. The ice cracked again, louder this time. A blinding flash filled the room, and all the drones froze in midair. Their red lights flickered, then turned off one by one. Silence returned. The heat from the chamber spread through the cavern like a heartbeat. Arya's eyes opened fully now, glowing bright blue. Her chest rose, and she took her first breath in centuries. Ethan stood frozen, unable to speak. She turned her head slowly, her voice weak but clear. "Who are you?" Ethan took a deep breath, his voice shaking. "I'm human, and I heard you calling." Her eyes filled with tears of light. "You heard us?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, and I'm getting you out of here." The ice ceiling above them rumbled again, sending snow in shards falling. The storm outside had reached its peak, and the tunnel was collapsing. Ethan looked up at the falling ice, then back at the sisters still trapped. He didn't have time to think, only to act. He whispered, "You're not dying here, not again," and started cutting through the second chamber. The sound of his torch filled the room. Each second felt like a lifetime. The ice cracked, the air grew warmer, and the first light of dawn began to shine faintly through the hole above. He didn't know if he would make it out, but he knew one thing: he wasn't leaving them behind. Ethan's hands shook as he pressed the torch against the second ice chamber. The heat hissed and cracked through the thick frost, sending streams of mist curling into the cold air. His oxygen meter blinked red, and his vision blurred from exhaustion. He had been down there too long, but he refused to stop. Behind the glass, he could see faint blue light flickering from the alien girl's chest, a slow rhythm trying to become a heartbeat. Arya, the first sister, was awake now, but too weak to move. She watched through the fog as Ethan worked to free her sibling. Her lips parted, and her voice came like a whisper carried by wind. You shouldn't be here." Ethan turned his head, startled, his helmet light reflecting on her glowing skin. "You can speak English?" he asked, shocked. Arya closed her eyes for a moment, her tone fragile. "Your language, old but familiar. We remember. Fragments." Ethan knelt beside her, trying to understand. Fragments? From what? But before she could answer, the ice chamber behind him exploded in a burst of blue steam. He covered his face as shards flew across the cavern, and when he looked up, another girl lay in the melting frost, gasping for breath. Her silver hair spread across the ground like light spilled on water. She blinked rapidly, confused and trembling. Arya reached toward her weakly, whispering, "Loom." Ethan pulled off his gloves and touched Loom's shoulder gently. Her skin was cold as glass, but alive. She flinched at his touch, her eyes glowing white for a second. Suddenly, the entire cavern brightened. Her body released a burst of light so strong it made Ethan fall back. Arya gasped, "Stop, Loom, stop!" The light faded slowly, leaving faint sparks in the air. Loom sat up, shivering. I thought we were dead." Arya smiled faintly. "We almost were." Loom's eyes shifted to Ethan, her voice soft and careful. "A human?" Ethan raised his hand slightly, trying to calm her. "Yeah. Name's Ethan Cole. I heard your signal." Loom tilted her head, confused. "Signal?" Arya whispered, our cry through the ice. It reached him. Loom stared at Ethan like she was seeing a legend come to life. "The old ones said humans were gone. Extinct." Ethan frowned. "Gone? We're very much alive." Arya's eyes dimmed. "Not in this part of the galaxy." The ground trembled again, a deep rumble rolling through the ice beneath them. Loom turned sharply toward the tunnels, her voice trembling. "They're coming." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Who?" "The Sentinels," Arya whispered. "The machines that guard this grave. They do not allow mistakes to live." Without warning, a metallic shriek echoed through the cavern. A flash of red light swept across the ice walls. Ethan cursed under his breath. "They're back." He grabbed his gear and pulled Arya to her feet. But she could barely stand. Loom tried to help, her body glowing faintly as she focused. The air shimmered, light bent around them, hiding them behind a veil of brightness. Ethan's eyes widened. "What did you just do?" Loom whispered, "Light obeys me. I can bend it for a while." They crouched behind an icy ridge as the drones entered the chamber. Their scanners hummed, voices cold and lifeless. Energy anomaly detected. Source unstable. Initiate termination. Ethan gritted his teeth, whispering, "Termination." My ass. He grabbed a shard of metal from the ground, a piece of one of the broken drones, and rewired its core battery. Loom watched, confused. "What are you doing?" Ethan smiled faintly. Making a distraction. He threw the charged core across the cavern. The drones turned instantly, their sensors following the heat. A second later, it exploded in a flash of sparks, blinding them. Ethan pulled Araya and Loom toward the tunnel, running through steam and smoke. The noise echoed behind them, metal claws scraping against ice. Loom's light flickered. Fading fast, Ethan looked back, panting. "You okay?" She shook her head, her glow dimming. "The cold. It's killing us again." They reached a narrow passage leading upward, ice dripping from the ceiling like frozen tears. Arya fell to her knees, coughing. Ethan helped her stand. His arm shaking under her weight, she whispered, "We can't survive on this planet." "Not for long," he frowned. "Then I'll get you out. I have a base on the surface." Loom's eyes widened in disbelief. "You would help us?" Ethan looked at her firmly. "You're alive, and that's all that matters." But just as he finished, a soft cry came from behind, a sound so weak it barely existed. They turned, and Ethan saw the third chamber glowing faintly. Inside lay the youngest sister, Nira, still trapped, her tiny hands pressed against the glass. Her heartbeat flickered on his scanner. Slower and weaker than the others. Arya gasped, "She's still alive!" Ethan rushed to the chamber and aimed his torch again. The ice was thicker this time, older, harder, every second counted, and the drones were already recovering behind them. Arya knelt beside the chamber, tears forming in her glowing eyes. "Please, Nira, hold on." "We're here," Ethan shouted over the noise of his tool. "How old is she?" "She was born the day they sealed us under," Arya said softly. She never saw the stars. The ice cracked. Steam burst out, and suddenly the entire cavern glowed bright blue. A wave of energy pushed Ethan back, and he hit the wall hard. Through the haze, he saw Nira move, her small fingers twitching as the frost melted around her. Her eyes opened, soft and silver. She looked up at Ethan and whispered, "You hurt us." The ground shook violently. Part of the ceiling collapsed, snow and debris crashing down. Ethan shielded the sisters, pulling them close. "Move." "We have to move now." Loom grabbed Nira's hand, helping her stand. Arya's voice broke with fear. "They won't stop until we're dead." Ethan led them toward the tunnel, his heart pounding. He didn't know how far the exit was or if his oxygen would last. But he knew this, he couldn't lose them now. Not after hearing their cries as they climbed the narrow path. The cavern behind them glowed red again. The drones were back, their sensors cutting through the fog. Ethan looked up at the faint light of the surface, whispering, "Just a little further. Just hold on." And for the first time since he arrived on that frozen world, Ethan realized he wasn't just saving 3 lives. He was saving a secret that could change everything. The tunnels of ice twisted like a maze carved by time. Ethan ran ahead, his boots crunching against the frozen floor, while the 3 sisters followed closely behind. The walls glowed faintly blue from the sisters' light, guiding them through the darkness. But behind them came the sound of metal and rage. The sentinels were not giving up. Their red lights sliced through the fog, scanning, hunting, killing. Ethan glanced at the scanner on his wrist, its screen flashing red. "They're catching up," he muttered. Arya turned her head, her breath shallow. "They won't stop until we're gone," Nira stumbled, her small legs weak from being frozen for centuries. Loom caught her quickly, her glowing hand supporting her sister. "Don't slow down," Loom whispered. "They can smell heat. They'll find us." The passage split ahead, 2 tunnels, both narrow and cold. Ethan stopped for a second, confused. "Which way?" he asked, his breath fogging in the frozen air. Arya closed her eyes, her body trembling as if she could feel the planet itself breathing. "The left," she said finally. "The right tunnel leads to the burial chambers." He nodded and led them down the left path, his flashlight flickering as they moved deeper. The air grew tighter, colder, heavier. It felt like the ice itself was listening. Behind them, the first sentinel appeared. Its red eye glowed through the mist, and its metallic voice echoed like a ghost. "Unauthorized life detected. Initiating cleansing sequence," Ethan cursed. "Great." They talk now. He turned and fired his flare gun toward the tunnel wall. The heat exploded against the ice, blinding the drone for a moment. But there were more, 3, maybe 4, closing in fast. Their footsteps echoed like thunder in the narrow space. Nira gasped as one of the beams of red light grazed her arm. She screamed, and the sound made Ethan's blood run cold. He turned back instantly, pulling her behind a slab of ice. Her arm glowed where the light had touched, silver veins spreading under her skin. Arya placed her hand over the wound, whispering words Ethan couldn't understand. The light dimmed and Nira's pain faded. Arya looked up at Ethan, her eyes full of fear. "She's changing. The ice here reacts to us." Ethan didn't know what she meant, but there was no time to ask. The tunnel opened suddenly into a massive cavern. Icicles hung from the ceiling like blades. In the middle was a frozen river, smooth, black, and impossibly wide. Steam rose from cracks in the surface. Giving the illusion of smoke, Ethan's scanner beeped wildly. Warning of unstable ground, he frowned. "If we cross this, it might collapse." Loom stepped forward, her eyes glowing brighter. "I can help," she said softly. She raised her hand, and a wave of white light spread across the ice. Solidifying it, the frozen river shimmered like glass, glowing gently under their feet. "Go," she said. "The light will hold for a short time." They ran, their reflections dancing below them. The sounds of pursuit grew louder. A sentinel entered the cavern, its red eye piercing the fog. Ethan turned and fired his flare gun again. The flare hit the drone's leg. Exploding in sparks, it staggered but didn't fall. Instead, it spoke in its cold mechanical tone. "Resistance detected. Escalation authorized." More drones dropped from the ceiling, crawling like spiders made of metal. Loom's light flickered, her body trembling from the strain. Ethan shouted, "Keep going. Don't look back." Halfway across the frozen river, the first drone fired. The laser beam sliced through the air, hitting the ice behind them. Cracks spread like lightning, the sound echoing through the cavern. "Run!" Ethan yelled, pulling Nira forward. The ice began to break apart, the glowing path flickering as chunks fell into the black water below. Steam hissed and the sound of rushing current rose from beneath. Ethan's heart pounded, his breath short and sharp. He could see the other side, just a few meters away. But Arya stumbled. The ground shifted beneath her. The ice broke apart, and she slipped into the freezing water. "No," Ethan shouted, dropping his gear and diving after her. The cold hit him like a knife, his muscles locking instantly. He could barely see through the dark water, only faint blue light drifting below. Arya's glow was sinking, fading fast. He kicked hard, pushing downward, his lungs burning. He grabbed her arm and pulled with all his strength. They broke the surface together. Gasping for air, Loom reached out, her hands glowing like suns. She pulled them to safety just as the ice behind them collapsed entirely. The drone stopped at the edge, scanning the chaos, unable to follow. Ethan lay on the ground, coughing and shaking. His suit was freezing solid, frost spreading across his helmet. Arya leaned over him, her glowing hands touching his chest. Warmth spread through him, his heartbeat returning to normal. He stared up at her in disbelief. What did you do?" She smiled weakly. "A gift from my bloodline. We share warmth. We give life." He tried to speak, but words failed him. For a moment there was peace, only the quiet sound of dripping ice and shallow breaths. Then Nira pointed toward the far tunnel. "More are coming," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan stood quickly. Gathering his tools, he looked at them, their glowing eyes, their trembling bodies, and realized how fragile they were. "They weren't soldiers, they were survivors," he said quietly. "My base isn't far if we reach it." "I can keep you safe," Loom shook her head. "You don't understand." "They will follow you." Ethan smiled grimly. "Then they'll learn what it means to chase a human." They started moving again, deeper into the tunnel that led to the surface. The wind grew louder, howling through the cracks like an angry spirit. Ethan could already see faint light ahead, his base beacon, glowing through the snow. But behind them the red lights returned. Faster this time, closer. The sentinels were not giving up. Ethan turned one last time, his eyes fierce. "Go! Don't stop no matter what!" He aimed his last flare at the ice roof and fired. The explosion shook the cavern, shards of ice crashing down to block the path. For a brief moment the noise faded, and only silence remained. Ethan stood there, breathing hard, looking at the sisters illuminated by the dim glow of his base light. He whispered, "You're safe. For now." But deep down he knew this was only the beginning of something far greater. Because what he had just saved under the ice was not only 3 lives, it was the secret of 2 civilizations. The storm outside roared like a beast as Ethan pushed open the airlock door. Cold air burst into the base, swirling around the sisters like ghosts from the ice. He quickly helped them inside, slamming the heavy door shut. The warmth of the base hit their faces, steam rising from their skin as the frost melted away. For the first time since their awakening, the alien sisters could breathe freely. Ethan collapsed into a chair, his body shaking from exhaustion. He removed his cracked helmet, revealing a face pale from the cold but burning with determination. He looked at them, three glowing beings who should not have existed. Their eyes shimmered with light, their skin reflecting colors that changed like the northern sky. Loom touched the wall, amazed. "So much heat," she whispered. "So much life in metal." Ethan smiled faintly. "It's not much, but it's home." Arya sat beside the heating unit, her hands close to the warmth. Nira, the youngest, looked around curiously, touching everything like a child seeing the world for the first time. Her voice was soft, almost musical. "You built all this alone?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, mostly. This outpost was meant for a team, but I stayed when the others left." Loom frowned. "You stayed alone on a dead world?" He looked down for a moment. Someone had to. The silence that followed was heavy, filled only by the hum of the machines. Arya finally spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "You shouldn't have found us." Ethan turned confused. "What do you mean?" She looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with sorrow. "Our kind buried us for a reason. We were never meant to wake again." Ethan stood up and grabbed his scanner, still connected to his wrist. "Well, too late for that," he said. "You're alive, and I want to know why they wanted you dead." He placed the scanner near Loom, who looked nervous but allowed him. The screen filled with strange energy patterns, symbols, cells and waves of blue light. He frowned. "This can't be right." He switched to a genetic scan, his heart pounding as the results appeared. Human DNA markers mixed with alien code. He blinked in disbelief. "Wait, this is impossible." Arya's face turned pale, her voice trembling. "So, you see it too?" Ethan looked at her. "You're part human." She nodded slowly. "Our creators tried to merge their essence with yours long ago, before your species even knew the stars existed," Loom added softly. "They called it the human code. The spark of adaptability, the seed of survival." Ethan's hands shook. "So you're saying humans helped create your kind?" Arya shook her head. "Not helped. Inspired. Your ancestors were once part of the same network of life that connected the galaxy. But your world was abandoned when the Council feared what humans could become." Ethan leaned against the table. Stunned, it felt like the air had been sucked from the room. He whispered, "They called us dangerous." Loom looked away. "Because you change what you touch, you build where others destroy. Your existence breaks balance," he laughed bitterly. "Yeah, sounds like us." For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the wind howled outside, scratching the windows like claws. Then Nira stepped forward, holding something she had found, a small metal plaque. It had the logo of the Earth Federation, the old space agency. She traced the letters slowly, whispering, "Earth, that's where you're from." Ethan nodded. "Yes, home. Though right now it's millions of light years away." Nira's eyes shimmered with wonder. "You left your world to reach others." He smiled sadly. "And maybe that's the problem." Suddenly, the base lights flickered, the computer screens filled with static. Ethan's head snapped toward the control panel. No, not now." He ran to the terminal, typing rapidly. Arya asked, "What's happening?" He didn't look up. "We've been detected. Something is scanning my systems." On the main screen, strange alien symbols appeared, an ancient warning in a language he didn't know. The sisters looked terrified. Loom whispered, "The Empire. They found us." Ethan slammed his fist on the console. "Damn it!" He turned to them. "They're tracking energy signatures. They must have traced the signal when I brought you back." Arya stood slowly, her expression hardening. "They won't stop until we're gone. They'll destroy everything on this planet to erase us." Ethan stared at her. "Then we fight." Loom shook her head. "You don't understand their power. They are billions strong." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, but they've never fought a human engineer with a death wish." He grabbed a small crate and began pulling out tools, wires, and weapon parts. Loom and Nira watched confused. "What are you doing?" Nira asked. Ethan answered without looking up. "Turning this research base into a fortress." Arya stepped closer. "You would risk your life for us?" He stopped, meeting her eyes. "I already did." Might as well finish the job as the storm raged outside. Ethan worked non-stop. He rewired power circuits, connected solar conduits to defense turrets, and used the drone's parts to create automated shields. The sisters helped however they could, their glowing energy stabilizing his systems. Loom charged the power cores with her light. Nira repaired circuits by touching them, her energy flowing like electricity. For the first time, human and alien worked side by side, not as enemies but as something new. Hours passed, and the base transformed into something unrecognizable. Arya stood by the window. Watching the storm fade into calm, she whispered, "They will come soon." Ethan wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Then we'll be ready." Loom's eyes glowed faintly. "Ethan, if we fall, promise you'll run." He smiled and shook his head. "You don't know humans very well, do you?" Arya looked at him, her voice soft. "No, but I'm beginning to." The base lights dimmed as the system went into combat mode. Far above the planet, unseen through the storm, a massive ship entered orbit. Its shadow covered the frozen world like a dark hand ready to crush. The sisters felt it in their blood. Their creators had returned, and this time, no one planned to show mercy. The sky above Virella burned with strange light. Through the endless clouds, a shadow moved, a colossal ship breaking through the storm. It was black and silent, shaped like a blade cutting the heavens. Its engines didn't roar. They hummed, deep and cold like something alive. Ethan stood at the window of his base. Watching it descend, he whispered under his breath, "So this is them." The alien sisters stood behind him, their faces pale with fear. Arya's voice trembled. "That ship, it belongs to the High Dominion, the ones who left us to die." Nira clutched her sister's arm. "They found us again." Loom's eyes glowed faintly, her tone hard. "They never stopped searching." Ethan turned toward them, his jaw tight. "Then they came to the wrong planet." He ran to the control panel. Switching the power grid to defense mode, the base lights dimmed, and red warning signals flashed through every corridor. Electric shields hummed to life outside. Surrounding the base with shimmering energy, Ethan grabbed his plasma rifle. Built from scavenged tech and his own stubborn hands, he turned to the sisters. "You stay behind the main generator if they break through. Run to the tunnels." Arya stepped forward. Shaking her head, "No, we fight together." Ethan frowned. "You barely survived yesterday." She met his eyes, her voice calm but strong. "You heard our cries, Ethan Cole? Now we will answer yours." The ground trembled as the ship released its first wave. Dozens of drones fell from the clouds like burning meteors. They hit the snow with bursts of light, rising up on thin metallic legs. Their red eyes locked on the human outpost. The air filled with the sound of engines, weapons charging, metal scraping. Ethan took a deep breath, his heart pounding. "Let's make history," he said, and pulled the trigger. Blue plasma bolts cut through the storm. The first drone exploded. Scattering shards of ice and metal, Loom raised her hands, her entire body glowing like a star. She released a wave of light that blinded the incoming swarm. The sky flashed white, and for a brief moment, the snow itself turned to glass. Ethan covered his eyes, shouting, "Loom! Tone it down!" But she didn't stop. Her light burst through the horizon, tearing apart 3 more drones before finally dimming. She fell to her knees, gasping. I can't hold it for long." Arya pulled her close. "Save your strength." The second wave came, bigger, faster, stronger. Massive walkers landed near the ridge, their legs digging into the ice. They looked like metallic beasts, roaring as they powered their cannons. Ethan ducked behind a wall of frozen crates, shouting, "Arya, Nira, now!" The two sisters focused together, their hands glowing as one. The ground beneath the walkers began to shake. Cracks spreading like veins, the ice shattered, swallowing one machine whole. The others stumbled, struggling to balance. Ethan fired again, hitting their core units one by one. The battlefield became a storm of fire and light. But the High Dominion ship above was far from done. A voice echoed from the skies, cold and cruel. "Unauthorized species detected, cleansing protocol initiated." Ethan's radio crackled with static, the voice repeating in his ear. He gritted his teeth. "Cleansing protocol. They sound like exterminators," Lume whispered. "To them, that's all we are." Then the beam came, a bright, red column of energy shot from the ship toward the surface. It struck near the base, melting the snow and shaking the entire ground. The blast sent Ethan flying across the room. Slamming into the wall, he groaned, his vision spinning. Arya screamed his name and ran to him, pulling him up. His suit was cracked, smoke rising from his shoulder. He coughed. "I'm fine. Just burned." She looked at him, her eyes glowing brighter. "You are human. But you fight like one of us," he smiled weakly. "I don't quit easy." Outside, the shields flickered under the ship's continuous fire. Sparks rained down as the generator overloaded. Loom crawled toward the control panel, her hand glowing again. "I can feed my energy into the grid. It will strengthen the shield." Ethan shook his head. "You'll kill yourself." She looked at him and smiled softly. "Then at least we'll buy you time." Before he could stop her, she placed both hands on the core. Her entire body blazed with light, so bright Ethan had to look away. The base shook, every system screaming under the sudden surge. The shield outside exploded with energy, repelling the drones with a massive shockwave. The snowstorm cleared for a moment. Revealing the stars above, the sisters stared at the sky. Their eyes filled with tears. Arya whispered, "Loom, stop, please." But it was too late. Her glow faded slowly, her body collapsing into Arya's arms. Ethan dropped beside them, his throat tight. He touched her shoulder, whispering, "She saved us." Arya nodded, tears falling onto Loom's still face. She gave light, even when there was none. The ground shook again. Stronger this time, the ship was charging another beam. Ethan looked at the reactor, its readings unstable. He realized it was overheating from the surge. If it exploded, it could destroy the ship, but it would also destroy everything else. He looked at Arya and Nira. "There's one way to end this." Arya's eyes widened. "No, Ethan, you can't." He stood slowly, wincing from pain. "If I connect the reactor to their energy frequency, I can overload their ship from here," Nira whispered. "You'll die." He smiled sadly. "Maybe, but they'll die with me." Arya grabbed his arm, her voice breaking. "Humans, you never stop fighting even when there's no hope." He looked at her softly. "It's kind of our thing." Then he handed her his wrist scanner. "If I don't make it, use this to find Earth. Tell them, we're not alone." He walked toward the control room as the ship's shadow darkened the sky again. The sisters watched him, tears glowing like stars in their eyes. Outside, lightning danced across the frozen plains. The ship's main weapon charged one final time. Ethan placed his hand on the reactor core. Electricity crawling across his suit, he whispered to himself, "Let's see how the universe likes a little human stubbornness." The lights of the base turned blue. The snow outside rose in a spiral of light. A surge of energy shot upward into the sky, meeting the ship's beam head-on. The explosion was silent at first, then it spread like dawn. Bright enough to turn night into day, the storm vanished. The air grew still, and the great ship of the High Dominion cracked apart, falling in pieces across the sky. In the quiet that followed, Arya and Nira ran out into the snow. They looked up, the heavens glowing with falling embers. Arya whispered, "Ethan." Nira held her sister's hand tightly. "He did it." Tears streamed down their glowing faces. They didn't notice the faint light pulsing under the snow near the reactor's remains. A human heartbeat, weak but still alive. The storm was gone. The sky above Virella was finally clear for the first time in centuries. The shattered clouds glowed softly under the light of two distant suns. Broken pieces of the High Dominion ship still burned as they fell across the frozen horizon. The air shimmered with quiet fire, and the wind whispered through the ice like a song of mourning. Arya stood in the snow, her eyes wide as she stared at the fading lights in the sky. Her breath trembled as she whispered, "It's over." Beside her, Nira clung to her hand, tears glowing on her cheeks like silver drops. The world around them was silent except for the crackle of cooling metal. The massive ship that had ruled the skies was now nothing but ruins scattered across the tundra. The empire that called itself eternal had fallen to one man, but Ethan was gone. The explosion had consumed the human base. The ground was blackened with melted ice and glass. Arya walked forward slowly, calling out his name again and again. "Ethan, Ethan, answer me." Her voice echoed through the valley, fading into the quiet cold. Nira knelt near the remains of the base, her small hands touching the scorched snow. She whispered, "His heartbeat. I can still feel it." Arya froze, turning sharply. "You're sure?" Nira closed her eyes, concentrating. Her glowing palms pressed against the ground, then her voice broke, filled with hope. "Yes. Faint, but it's there." They ran together to the shattered core of the base. Steam rose from twisted metal. Sparks danced across the ruins, and there, half buried under a broken beam, lay Ethan Cole. His armor was torn, his face pale, but his chest still moved. Slowly, weakly, he was breathing. Arya fell beside him. Tears of light spilling from her eyes, she touched his cheek gently. "You foolish human," she whispered, her voice breaking. He stirred slightly, his lips moving. "Arya."
"You're alive."
She smiled through her tears. "Because of you." He coughed, trying to sit up, but pain shot through his body. She stopped him gently. "Rest. The fight is over." Ethan looked around at the burning sky. He gave a weak laugh. "Didn't think I'd ever see a sunset here." Arya brushed his hair from his forehead, whispering, "You brought it back." Nira and Loom's light still lingered in the air, glowing softly like spirits. Their energy had merged with the storm itself, keeping the atmosphere calm. Arya could feel their presence, warm, protective, eternal. She looked up at the twin suns, whispering a silent prayer for her fallen sister. Ethan's eyes followed her gaze. "They saved us all, didn't they?" Arya nodded. "Loom's light still watches over us." Hours passed, and the wreckage stopped burning. The planet that once screamed with storms now rested under a gentle wind. Ethan sat up with their help, his breath shallow but steady. Arya wrapped him in her glowing cloak, sharing her warmth. He looked at her and said softly, "You know, when I heard your voices through the static, I thought I was going crazy." She smiled faintly. "Maybe you were, but madness led you to us." He laughed weakly. "Guess that's a fair trade." The three of them sat together under the pale blue sky. Nira leaned her head on Arya's shoulder, whispering, "What will happen now?" Arya looked into the distance, her voice calm but heavy. "The Dominion will come again someday. They never forget." Ethan nodded. "Then we'll be ready." He looked at the melted snow where the reactor once was. From the ice, small green sprouts began to grow, tiny plants glowing faintly with light. He smiled in disbelief. Life on this frozen world. Arya's eyes widened. "It's your energy, Ethan. Your life force merged with ours. Your fire woke the planet." Nira gasped, touching one of the glowing leaves. "It's warm." For the first time, warmth spread across Virella. The wind carried not cold, but the smell of new air. The planet was changing, reborn from destruction. Ethan looked at the growing light and whispered, "Oh, this is what happens when humans and aliens work together." Arya smiled softly. "Maybe this is what the universe always feared, what it always needed." They helped him stand, his steps slow but firm. He looked at the horizon where the last pieces of the Dominion ship burned out in the distance. "What will you do now?" he asked quietly. Arya looked up at the stars. "We will rebuild, and we will tell our people what you did. The Dominion's lies must end. They must know that a human saved the lost daughters of their own creation." Ethan smiled faintly. "Sounds like you'll have a lot of explaining to do." She turned to him, her glowing eyes soft. "Then come with us." He blinked. "Me?" "Yes," she said. "The stars need to see what a human heart can do." Nira clapped her hands, her voice bright again. "He should come. He's one of us now." Ethan laughed, shaking his head. "I'm just a mechanic, not a hero." Arya stepped closer, touching his chest where his heartbeat glowed faintly beneath his skin. "Maybe. But your heart holds more courage than 1,000 warriors." They watched the horizon together as the light of dawn spread across the frozen land. The snow glowed gold. The ice sparkled like glass. The sky above shimmered with strange auroras, colors that had not been seen for 1,000 years. For a moment the world was silent again, but not empty. It was alive, reborn, waiting for a new story. Ethan looked at the stars, his voice low but steady. "If anyone's listening out there, know this," he said. "They were left to die, but we heard them and we answered." The sisters smiled, their eyes bright with hope. For the first time in galactic history, the line between human and alien began to fade, and far above, The stars themselves seemed to pulse, carrying the echo of that promise across the cosmos. Aria took his hand as the wind danced around them. "Come, human," she said softly. "Let's show the galaxy what mercy looks like." Ethan nodded, his eyes on the rising sun. "Let's make it remember us," he said. And together they walked toward the horizon, a human and two alien sisters, leaving behind a frozen grave and stepping into a dawn that would change the universe forever.